Going, not gone, but the sheriff is. Did the Me Too movement catch up with Jackson County's top law enforcement official? Less than 6 months after voters approved a $1 billion plan to build a new-look KCI, why the airlines say the design is now too small and opening day is being pushed back. Thousands of area school students walk out again and pressing for change on marijuana.
Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome everyone, I'm Nick Haynes. With so much fast-changing news happening in our metro, it's getting tough to review the week in 27 minutes or less, but we're going to give it our best shot. Hoping to connect the dots on most important stories of the week in this place we call home, from 41 Action News reporter Kat Reed, and from KMBC 9 News, Michael Mahoney. KCUR contributing reporter Kevin Collison, who heads up the news blog City Scene KC, and from the pages of the Kansas City Star, Steve Vokrot. We talked about it last week and we talked about it the week before, but the future of Missouri Governor Eric Greitens remains the top story making news on both sides of state line. Now Missouri's top Republican legislative leaders calling for the governor to step down. Senate President Ron Richards calling for impeachment proceedings to begin immediately. Also this week, a judge refusing a request from the governor's legal team to dismiss the felony charge against him. Greitens was indicted in February after allegations arose that he took a semi-nude photo of a woman and threatened to release it to prevent her talking about the affair. Is there anything the Missouri governor can say or do now that can keep him in office for the long term, Michael Mahoney?
Well, he can be acquitted of the charge in St. Louis City. That's the invasion of privacy charge. That would remove one element of his legal problems, but it's also likely he may be indicted very soon once again on another charge of illegally using the Mission Continues donor list, which is supposed to be tax exempt and not political, for political fundraising. And the idea of him, if he is acquitted, escaping impeachment seems like a long shot. Impeachment is not a legal process, it's a political process. And Nick, as you just said, his political support, what little there was to begin with, is collapsing inside of the State House.
This Mission Continues foundation that Eric Greitens started quite a few years ago is now become the sort of issue, should there be criminal charges filed against that? That seems a complicated story. Why should we care about that, Kat?
Well, it's important because it's easy to get caught up in salacious details of an affair, of the picture, the mistress, but we're talking about a complicated legal issue here, and there seems at this point to potentially be some more merit to that legal fight, some concrete evidence that they've found, so it's important to keep an eye on that instead of just getting wrapped up in the affair.
We see even University of Missouri professors, though, this week, Steve Vokrot, coming to the defense of the governor when they're looking at all of these charges and whether impeachment proceedings should begin. This from Michael Wolff, the former dean of the law school at St. Louis University. The Constitution's words aren't clear. That can Greitens be impeached for something he did before becoming governor?
Right. Well, and so since impeachment proceedings are so rare that the law behind this has not really been tested, and presumably if the House moves and passes articles of impeachment, we'll get a clearer sense of what the legality behind these allegations against Eric Greitens are and how they can be used against him. And as it relates to the Mission Continues, one could plausibly make the case, if they can prove that this donor list was purloined from the charity, one could make the argument that it helped him get elected and that it would have some effect and bearing on his legislative role.
Michael.
And the thing to remember here is that the Speaker of the House, Todd Richardson, said on Thursday of this week that they are circulating a petition to move towards impeachment in a special session that would take place after the adjournment of this session on May 18th. They need 3/4 of the entire legislature to do that. In the House alone, that's going to be 122 people. The Republican majority has about 70% of the folks there, but they don't have 122. They're going to need Democrats to sign on to this. A lot of the Democrats want this done in the current session, not a special session, and that's where they're going to be. There's going to be some pushback on this, so that's another thing they'll be watching.
We get the impression, of course, that the only thing happening in Jefferson City is people wringing their hands over the governor and this affair. But I'm assuming other work is actually getting done in Jefferson City, Kevin Collison.
Well, I know from my point of view, covering city development, et cetera, there's a lot of concern about the fate of the historic tax credit in Jeff City these days. It's been an important development tool. There are other concerns about, that affect the city. I'm not totally up to speed yet on what exactly the legislation is, but it's certainly a situation where, Jeff City has had some real creative tension when it comes to how it deals with Kansas City and St. Louis. There's an effort to limit the amount of sales tax revenues that the cities can collect. So we really still have a lot of uncertainty as to how this legislative session is going to end up and how it relates with its two largest cities.
So while the headlines are salacious about the governor and affair, some work being done, Michael.
Some work. They're working on a tax cut bill that cleared the House. The tax credits that Kevin just referred to is also sort of caught up in the Greitens affair here, because the governor at the beginning of this term of the legislature really heavily criticized the tax credits that the state hands out. It was one of his signature proposals, and not much of anything that Eric Greitens wants is getting done down at Jeff City.
While efforts are underway to oust Missouri Governor Eric Greitens, closer to home, another top elected leader abruptly resigns this week. Did the Me Too movement catch up with Jackson County Sheriff Mike Sharp? What did he do so wrong that he's departing immediately after close to a decade in office, Kat?
So this is a complicated one. This starts with, we have a couple of lawsuits involved here, but most recently he gave a deposition in a lawsuit involving a former sheriff's office employee. In that deposition, he talks about the fact that they were involved in a romantic and financial relationship during the time when she was employed at the sheriff's office. So this woman, Christine Lind, she has also been suing the sheriff's office, suing the county rather, for sexual harassment, discrimination while she was working there. So she has this lawsuit. Sheriff Sharp has been wrapped up in this as well, having to give a deposition, and all of this kind of came to light this week with these new court filings, and that's what put it over the edge.
But, his opponent in the last election brought up many of these allegations, Steve Vockrodt. What was the tipping point, though, that prompted him to actually resign when we have other public officials say, absolutely not, I did nothing wrong?
Yeah, so Bryce Stewart brought up some of these allegations because this lawsuit was filed in 2015, and so some of the general nature of the allegations has been out there, but some of these new filings puts a finer and easily more damaging point to it. For example, he acknowledged that he gave Christine Lind $8,000 for a down payment on a house in Clay County. His name is on that deed, and in most circumstances, if your name is on the deed, you've represented to your lender that you plan to live there. So does he live there? If he does live there in Clay County, is that a problem with the county charter that suggests that countywide elected officials need to live in Jackson County? So that's one issue. Another issue is just the disclosure that he was discussing this lawsuit, including attorney-client privileged information, with somebody who was suing that county with allegations against that very department for retaliation. That's a huge legal problem. So those things combined, as well as a few other details that are out there, really.
But even though these allegations came up, the court filings are made, he could have just said, I'm staying in office, Michael.
He could have, but he didn't. And when he issued his statement, what I think is interesting about it, I'm certainly not a lawyer by any stretch of the imagination, is he acknowledged this, and I think that will accelerate the likelihood of a settlement in this case. The other point, Nick, that I wanted to bring up on here is the political dynamics of this. The removal of Mike Sharp as the Jackson County Sheriff. He was a major opponent of County Executive Frank White when it came to what the county is going to do with the jail, and that takes Mike Sharp off the board. There's going to be some debate about whether or not the County Executive White gets to appoint an interim replacement, or whether the legislature does that. But the big thing is one of his major opponents, the County Executive's major opponents, in the debate over the jail is now off the board.
Now, the resignation of Sheriff Mike Sharp wasn't the only damaging headline coming out of Jackson County this week. The man in charge of Jackson County government also under scrutiny amid reports he may be losing his house for failing to keep up on mortgage payments. Some questioning this week if former Royal star Frank White can't handle his personal finances. Is it fair to ask how he's handling the county's money? Is it fair to ask that question, Steve?
Certainly, that's the main reason that this whole question is in the news, and this is the third time that his house has been listed for foreclosure. It hasn't been foreclosed upon. This latest one is scheduled to go into foreclosure in May. So that's really the prime question: is A, what's his grasp on finances? And B, is he in a position where he's vulnerable to any outside interests because of his financial issues?
And the Missouri State Auditor this week also calling for, or beginning a probe of Jackson County government and how it's spending its money, Michael.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to the ongoing dispute between the county legislature and the county executive about who needs to call the shots and whether or not the legislature controls the power of the purse or it's the county executive's office. Things are, turmoil is too small a word to describe what's going on at the courthouse right now.
Less than 6 months after voters approved a $1 billion plan to build a new single terminal at KCI, why are the airlines saying the design is now too small and the city backing away from a completion date for the project? The airlines say they need 4 more gates than the plan provides. Are these minor adjustments that should be expected in a project of this scope and scale, or a red flag for deeper concerns, Kevin?
Oh, I think they're definitely minor considerations that are not really a significant situation. In fact, we may end up getting more gates than's already being talked about. The terminal may actually become much larger to accommodate those gates. You know, they found out, much to their delight, that our airline passenger projections are far more than they originally thought. And they want to build, again, we must have remember this is an airport that we're going to be using for the next 50 years, hopefully, in this area. And they want to make sure that they have something that they won't, in 10 years, have to suddenly build an addition. I don't think this is anything that is outside the ordinary when it comes to a project of this size. But what would stop
the airline saying a year from now, Kat, wow, our projections were wrong, we actually need 8 more gates?
Well, the plans currently do show the progression over the years of how they would continue to add more gates on. But right now, they've only talked about this 39-gate plan. And the thing that is a little bit concerning to some is that we don't yet know how this is going to impact the overall cost of the terminal. And also the timeline is likely going to be impacted. But no one is committing to saying exactly how that timeline will be impacted right now.
So when was the airport supposed to be completed? And what's the change now in the new plan from the city?
I think in Edgemoor's original proposal, they were talking November 2021, and now that's up in the air. I understand that they're going to spend the next 70 days or so trying to refine a completed timeline. But, you know, airport projects are notoriously difficult. You know, we're talking $1 billion project. It could open sooner, it could open later. The timelines are, at this point, are pretty ephemeral.
A red flag for you, Michael?
Not really. To reinforce Kat's point, though, on this, in their plans right now, they've got 35 gates. This would move it up to 39. They also have plans for 42 and up to 50. So they are looking out long range on this. What I find interesting is the fact that, yeah, the $964 million figure is a 2015 number. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Well, you know that's up. And also the fact that Edgemoor will say, well, we're not in a position to speak to that right now. Candor is going to be very important in this whole thing. It has been so far. If it's going to be a little later, say so.
And I think the important thing to remember is whatever the ultimate price tag, you know, we're still talking about a facility that's going to be paid for by the users. You know, I do not foresee any situation where they're going to have to suddenly say we need $100 million out of the city treasury to make this thing work. And the other big issue that's still working beneath the surface is they still got to get a deal worked out between the unions and the minority community about the makeup of the workforce. The unions are still insisting on 100% union jobs, and the minority community is still insisting on a significant participation, and it's still a challenge to get those things to work out.
And I was going to build upon that, Kevin. I've been talking to both sides about that labor harmony agreement. They say that negotiations are ongoing. They think that they can reach an agreement, but right now it seems unclear how exactly they're going to come to that agreement. You have two sides of the coin. They're not seeming to come to meet in the middle. So
we hear a lot of the headlines about that, but why should we care about that, Steve?
Care about the labor harmony agreement?
Yes.
Because it's going to impact, it's it's more the politics behind this, and it's going to impact the progress of the negotiations, and it's one of those factors that will ultimately impact when and how this gets done.
Next, a streetcar update. This week we learned that a little more than 5,000 people asked for a mail-in ballot for the final election that will decide whether or not the city should extend the streetcar line from Union Station down to the Plaza and onto UMKC. KCPT sent out its cameras to get a snapshot of your feelings as we walked the proposed route.
It's excellent. We love the streetcar. This should definitely only be the start, because right now it's only, you know, a mile or so long, so it just doesn't connect very much. They're going to try to connect to UMKC, and that would be genius. And then trying to get something that goes east to the stadiums too would be a really good idea, just to help everybody out.
I think that they're trying to compete with other cities and states as far as with that streetcar or whatever. I think it's a waste of the taxpayers' money.
No, I think we have a wonderful bus system, but the streetcar needs to be expanded.
I'm not sure if I would take it to the Plaza personally, but I think it's a good option.
Well, we're visitors, but why not? You get to see Kansas City in a way you never see it. So yeah, I think it'd be interesting.
I mean, there's been a fever of real estate development here, you know, and I would imagine that it would open up to other areas depending upon where their stops are. You know, all of Main Street could use help.
Yes and no. It's a good idea, but it's going to be very expensive. I mean, I believe in public transportation, but of course, I'm like everybody else. I don't want to pay for it.
A smattering of your views. While mail-in ballots for the streetcar extension will be sent out in the next few weeks, officials are still trying to figure out how it'll actually work. In the last few days, the Streetcar Authority offered up only suggested streetcar stops, and they're still determining whether, if approved, the vehicles will travel parallel to the curb or down the center of Main Street. So voters will be deciding this election without knowing all these details, Kevin?
Well, it'd be interesting to know how many of the folks that were interviewed actually live in what they call the Transportation Development District, because that's where the money comes from to make this thing work. It's not a citywide tax. It's basically a tax that's going to be levied on people that live within the boundaries of the Transportation Development District as it extends from downtown out to UMKC. Right now, what the Streetcar Authority is doing is they're soliciting opinion about the final plan that they want to implement if they can get federal funding. There's a mail-in vote going on. You referred to that with the 5,000 people who applied for mail-in ballots. Those need to be in by early June. That's the third election they've had in this Transportation Development District. This one would be to empower the Transportation District Board to be able to levy these property tax surcharges as well as the sales tax surcharge within that TDD. Then it all goes out to Washington, and we find out whether they can get over $100 million in federal funding for this.
Can't.
Yeah, to add on to that, we're talking about this Transportation Development District and these taxes. This goes back to something we were discussing earlier about a potential sales tax cap. We're keeping an eye on what's going on in Jefferson City because this sales tax cap could impact expansion of the streetcar if there is a cap put on that, and you can't keep adding these districts.
But Kevin mentioned the federal money. The first streetcar line did require a hefty amount of federal cash to make it happen. This is a different administration now. Can the city actually rely on that funding from the federal government now to complete this proposal?
They continue to hope so. Whether or not it's there remains a big question. And then there's the whole question, Nick, about whether or not something like this, given the enormity of it, should be a citywide vote. Now, it's not a citywide vote, and it's deliberately not a citywide vote because the advocates of the streetcar do not believe that they could win a citywide vote, so they have scaled it down to the transportation taxing district and the 5,000 people that Kevin mentioned. But this is a big deal. It's a big deal for the city. Things like this ought to go to a citywide vote.
Now, some of the people we spoke to, some people don't like to have a camera thrust in their face and say something, but privately they were asking, will this new expanded line still be free as the current streetcar is, Kevin?
To the best of our understanding, it would still be free because it essentially connects the existing Transportation Development District with this and the fares. And as we talked about before the show started, there is a school of thought that, you know, these fares sometimes can be counterproductive. But and there's also the interesting discussion about the stops. You know, there is I think most of them follow the existing MAX stops along Main Street. There is some discussion about whether you should, they want to do it on Linwood. The folks on 31st Street say, you know, hey, we've got a lot of activity here. And then there's also a couple of fairly close together at 43rd and 45th. that people say, you know, well, let's keep this thing going. And then also, should it go down the middle of the street or along the sides of the street? The pros for the middle of the street are it's a smoother running thing. You don't have to worry about parked cars. On the side of the street, it's like does a lot more for economic development and makes it a little easier for pedestrians.
You were looking at the issue of being free too, Steve.
Right. Yeah, like Kevin said, is sometimes there's some analysis about charging fares for public transportation and whether the money you have to put in for infrastructure, such as the machinery to collect the fares and the security, because you're often dealing with cash, whether you end up spending more to make money than you're actually making money.
Now, we're just off of Main right here at KCPT, and it's amazing as you travel down to the plaza on Main, there are actually huge pockets of growth. There are apartment complexes, lots of development happening there. Was that development happening before that, or is this developers trying to cash in on the proposed streetcar line, even though it's not built yet?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question, but I do think from what I've heard from developers who have announced projects, including a really significant redevelopment of the old Hawthorne Plaza building at 39th and Main, it is definitely related to the hopes of the streetcar extending down there, that route.
Now, for the second time, students in area school districts are walking out of their classrooms as part of a national school walkout following the shooting deaths at a Florida high school. Friday's event is timed to coincide with the anniversary of the massacre at Columbine High School in Colorado. We got this email from viewer Fran, who asks, why are these political protests occurring during school hours? Why can't they happen after school or over the weekends when they won't be so disruptive? How many walkouts are they planning this year? Anyone got an answer to that?
Oh, I mean, the reason they're happening is it's tied with the Columbine anniversary, and as you described it, the massacre at Columbine. Well, what happened in Florida was even a greater number of victims there. That's how you make a point, is by doing something in a time and a period where you're going to catch folks' attention. I said on this broadcast a few weeks ago, I sense a vibe out there about this, and I still do, but you also have to recognize that let's see where the votes are on this in November and subsequent elections, whether or not this translates into a real political movement.
Have we seen any evidence, though, that these walkouts have actually led to any tangible changes in Jefferson City, Topeka?
Well, we do know for the Parkland kids that there have been some changes in Florida. These students, the thing that makes this walkout different is instead of going out for 17 minutes, they plan to stay out for the entire day, which is quite the statement. We haven't seen a whole lot of movement, but we do know that Secretary of State Chris Kobach is hosting a kind of opposition rally at 10 a.m. The same day. So you do have a response from the people in power. And I think regardless of political affiliation, we can all agree that it's pretty impressive that kids who are 16, 17, 18 are organizing things. I mean, what were you doing when you were 17?
What I did at 17 is not going to be revealed on this program at this hour. Michael Mahoney, though, is going to tell us what he was doing at 17.
I was marching in some streets against the war, but the fact of the matter is it's very unlikely in states like Kansas and Missouri that you're going to see any sort of meaningful change, because the votes are not there, and people believe that the gun laws in the state of Kansas and Missouri are appropriate.
I was at a British university, by the way, at 18, which burned down the Barclays Bank, one of the largest banks in the UK, because of its investments in apartheid South Africa. So there was that movement taking place. Today also marks 420, often referred to as National Weed Day, where tens of thousands of Americans here and across the country celebrate a drug that remains illegal in most states. But Fox News this week puts Missouri on their map of likely places to legalize marijuana. 4 separate measures are now underway to liberalize Missouri's marijuana laws. Missouri is among a dozen states looking at medical marijuana legalization this year. So this is not about making pot legal in Missouri. These proposals are more narrowly focused on those people who can show a doctor's note that their conditions would improve if they were allowed to use marijuana, Steve?
That's correct. And we've seen this pattern over the last 10 years of, often the route to legalization and more permissive use of marijuana starts with the medicinal marijuana movement. But you know, there's certainly a shifting tide of public opinion about this, and it's even a bipartisan issue too in state legislatures, where they're looking at what's happened in Colorado and Washington. Colorado in particular, they haven't had a whole ton of severe problems in relation to legalizing even recreational marijuana, and they're making a whole lot of money over it. And so for states like Missouri and Kansas in particular that have ongoing severe budget problems, hey, why not give this a look somewhere down the road?
And we've also seen in the city of Kansas City, as far as I know right now, the police, it's a ticket. I mean, you have to be possessing a lot of marijuana to get anything more than just what is now a traffic ticket. So we're seeing gradual softening in the law enforcement community, and as Steve points out, I mean, states that are desperate for revenues are taking a look at Colorado and California and saying, hey, you know, this is a very potentially lucrative area.
Michael, I mentioned 4 proposals. 3 of them would actually require signatures to get on the ballot in Missouri, and you'd have to vote then to make this happen. One is a legislative proposal, but what are the chances of any of these succeeding?
Quite good, quite good. There are active petition drives underway. They have to turn them in here in a few weeks. I fully expect it to be on the ballot. And to sort of kind of follow this up, if folks can think back to 20 years ago, 25 years ago, Kansas and Missouri had a very similar discussion about riverboats and gambling, and that was verboten for a long time in these states. Then they started to take a look at the revenue. If the money's there, they're going to take a hard look at this. And I find it parallel.
We mentioned a lot of what is happening on the Missouri side, but Kansas has also been looking at this too, Kat.
Yes, it's not on that Fox News of likely on that map, but they have been looking at it. Representative Cindy Holscher out of Olathe has been trying to push this forward. She said even though a measure to legalize medical marijuana failed, she did say that she's been approached by people on both sides of the aisle who want to keep working on that. And one measure that did move forward was legalizing CBD oil, cannabidiol oil, which is an extract that did move forward. And that helps some shops that currently sell it and have been living in this legal gray zone, because even if they don't have any THC or a very low percentage, recently the Attorney General earlier said that not legal.
And that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers, as I put my teeth back in, from 41 Action News, Kat Reed, and at the helm of the news blog City Scene KC, Kevin Collison, from the pages of the Star, Steve Vokrot, and KMBC Chief Political Reporter Michael Mahoney. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.